The metallic voice on the PA system announced a departure, but Jasmine Duval was frozen in place, the scent of stale coffee and disinfectant filling her lungs. Across the terminal, her ex-husband Gregory laughed a sharp barking sound that sliced right through her. "Still on your knees for a living, Jazz," he sneered, his new fiancée clinging to his arm like a designer handbag. Jasmine's navy blue uniform felt like a lead vest. She said nothing, her dignity a fragile shield. She didn't know that just yards away, the wealthiest man in the state was watching. And she couldn't possibly know that in 1 hour she would leave this all behind. In his Bentley. The chill of the Teterboro Airport terminal was a familiar, unwelcome companion. It seeped through the thin fabric of Jasmine Duval's celestial clean polo shirt, a constant reminder of her pre-dawn start. At 6:00 a.m., the private terminal was a strange mix of sterile silence and sudden frantic energy. Jasmine moved through it like a ghost, her sole mission a hot black coffee from the small Starbucks concession before her shift began. She was measuring out a packet of sugar when she heard the voice. A voice she hadn't heard in 8 months, but one that still haunted her nightmares. Well, well. If it isn't Mrs. Oh, wait, Miss Duval, my mistake. Jasmine's hand froze. The sugar packet hung suspended over the cup. She squeezed her eyes shut for a single painful second before turning around. Gregory King stood there looking like a walking advertisement for cheap cologne and aspirational wealth. His suit was a size too tight, gleaming with a synthetic sheen under the fluorescent lights. His shoes were sharp enough to be weapons, and on his wrist he flashed the Rolex he'd bought with their joint savings right before he'd served her the divorce papers. Beside him, a woman Brenda Jasmine remembered from Gregory's social media was draped over his arm. She was all sharp angles, platinum blonde hair, and a cocktail ring with a diamond so large it looked like costume jewelry, even though Jasmine knew it was distressingly real. "Gregory," Jasmine said, her voice flat. She willed her hands not to shake. "I almost didn't recognize you," he said, his eyes doing a slow, insulting appraisal of her uniform. The navy blue pants, the sensible non-slip shoes, the polo with the small embroidered logo of a Comet Celestial Clean. "Brenda, honey, this is my ex-wife Jasmine. I was telling you about her." Brenda looked Jasmine up and down with an expression of profound boredom, as if she were inspecting a piece of furniture she had no intention of buying. "Oh, the one who... Right." Gregory's smirk widened. "Still playing Cinderella? I thought you'd at least be managing the mops by now. But I guess some people are just born for the service industry." The barista, a young man with tired eyes, looked away, pretending to wipe down a perfectly clean espresso machine. The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot, creeping flush that started at Jasmine's chest and burned its way up her neck. "I'm working, Gregory," she said, turning back to her coffee. "That's what you call this work." He laughed, that sharp barking sound again. "Come on, Jazz. You're wiping down toilets for billionaires who don't even know you exist. What happened to all that big talk? All those books?" He waved a dismissive hand. The books. That was where it had all gone wrong. Their marriage hadn't just ended, it had imploded. Gregory, a junior real estate agent obsessed with image, had been thrilled when she supported him working 2 jobs so he could get his licenses and build his brand. The moment his first big commission check cleared, the man she married vanished. She remembered the night vividly. He'd come home to their small apartment not with champagne but with a scowl. Jasmine was at the kitchen table, her laptop open, a stack of textbooks on jet propulsion beside her. "What is this?" he'd asked, pointing at her screen, which showed a complex schematic of a turbine engine. "It's my application," she'd said, smiling, thinking he'd be proud. "I got accepted into the MIT Online MicroMasters program for aerospace engineering. It's what I've always wanted, Greg. Before everything." His face had crumpled. "Engineer and Jasmine, we're not in college anymore. I'm a partner now. We need to look the part. I need a wife who hosts dinner parties at the Capitol Grill, not one who smells like textbook glue." He'd said the word partner like it was a royal title. He was in fact a junior associate at a small suburban realty firm. "This is the part, Greg," she'd argued. "This is my career. Your career is set now, it's my turn." "Your turn," he had scoffed. "Your turn is to support me. I'm the one making real money. I'm the one pulling us up. I can't be dragging dead weight behind me, Jasmine. And this dream of yours is dead weight. I need a trophy, not a science project." He left her 2 weeks later, claiming she lacked ambition and was content to be small. The irony was so bitter it choked her. He'd drained their savings, filed for divorce, and immediately started dating Brenda, the daughter of a minor property developer. And Jasmine, with her half of the depleted funds and a mountain of pride, had moved into a studio apartment and found the first job she could that paid the bills and allowed her the mental space to study celestial clean. The job was in a twist of fate at Teterboro, the busiest private aviation airport in the country. She was quite literally surrounded by the machines she was learning to build. Now, standing in the Starbucks, all that pain came rushing back. "Still got your head in the clouds, I see," Gregory continued, relentless. "Or are you just cleaning them? Tell me, do you even get to fly or just buff the wings?" Brenda tittered. Jasmine picked up her coffee. She looked Gregory square in the eye. Her voice was quiet, but it didn't tremble. "I have to go. I have a G650 to prep for an 0800 departure." "Ooh, a G650, he mocked, using air quotes. "Impressive. Listen, I'm here to meet a client, a real client. We're flying to Miami to look at a penthouse. My pilot is probably prepping my plane right now." He tapped his Rolex. "Time is money, you know. And it looks like you're not making much of either." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled $1 bill, and tossed it into her empty tip jar, which sat by her purse. The paper bounced off her bag and landed on the counter. "For your trouble, honey. Don't spend it all in one place." With a final pitying look, he steered Brenda away, his laughter echoing in the cavernous room. Jasmine stood there for a full minute. The coffee was scalding her hand, but she didn't feel it. She felt the old familiar shame, but underneath it, something new. A cold, hard resolve that had been forming for 8 months. It was a diamond being compressed from coal. She didn't take the dollar. She grabbed her bag, her textbook heavy inside it, and walked toward the security checkpoint for the tarmac. Gregory thought she was a joke. He thought she was invisible. She was about to find out just how wrong he was. The world, on the line, as the tarmac was called, was a different universe from the public terminal. Past security, the air smelled of jet fuel and cold Atlantic wind. It was a world of pure, unadulterated power. Bombardier Globals and Gulfstreams sat parked in neat rows, their gleaming white fuselages looking more like spacecraft than airplanes. This was Jasmine's sanctuary. Her company, Celestial Clean, was not a simple janitorial service. It was a bespoke, high-stakes detailing operation. Their clients were the 0.01%. When a tech CEO or a foreign dignitary paid $70 million for an aircraft, they didn't want Windex and paper towels. They wanted a team that understood how to clean $10,000 a yard silk carpets, polish rare mahogany veneers without scratching, and sanitize a galley kitchen without leaving a chemical scent. One mistake, a scratch on a leather seat, the wrong solvent on a carbon fiber winglet, could cost tens of thousands of dollars to repair. Jasmine's boss, Maria, a sharp-eyed woman who had built the company from nothing, ran the teams with military precision. "You are not maids," she'd drill them in training. "You are preservation specialists. You are invisible, but you are essential. The moment they stop seeing the clean, that's when you've done your job." Jasmine was more than essential. She was exceptional. While other cleaners grumbled about the demanding work, Jasmine studied the planes. She knew that the leading edge of a G650's wing was a marvel of laminar flow design, and she cleaned it with the reverence of a museum curator. She knew the avionics in the cockpit were sensitive to dust and static, so she used specialized approved equipment. Her work friend Robert, an older man with a gentle smile who had been cleaning planes for 20 years, often watched her. You don't just clean 'em, Jazz, he said one afternoon as they sat in the small break room. You look at 'em, like you're trying to figure out their secrets. Jasmine smiled, pushing her copy of Fundamentals of Aerodynamics deeper into her bag. I just think they're amazing, Rob. All that power, the physics of it, it's like magic. It ain't magic, it's just math, he chuckled. But you got the math brain. You're not long for this world, kid. I see you. You're going to be one of the people designing these things, not wiping them down. His words were a small balm on the raw wound Gregory had left. Jasmine was pouring every spare cent and every waking moment into her program. The job at Teterboro wasn't just a paycheck. It was immersion therapy. It was a daily reminder of her goal. Today, however, Gregory's voice was stuck in her head. Still on your knees for a living. She tried to shake it off as she suited up for her first assignment, the G6 and 50 she'd mentioned. It belonged to a hedge fund manager who was notoriously picky. Jasmine, you take the cockpit and the main cabin. Maria instructed, her clipboard in hand. Robert, you have the galley and aft. I want this thing reflecting like a mirror in 1 hour. Wheels up at Euro 800. Jasmine entered the aircraft, the scent of rich leather and recycled air greeting her. The cabin was silent, luxurious, and cold. She set to work, her movements precise and economical. She cleaned the touch screens of the avionics suite, polished the pilot's yokes, and vacuumed the plush carpet in perfect straight lines. She worked with a focused intensity, channeling her anger into her task. Dead weight. She wiped down a porthole window. Lack of ambition. She polished a burled wood cabinet. Born for the service industry, she was so focused that she didn't hear the footsteps on the cabin's entry stairs. Miss Duval! Jasmine jumped, letting out a small yelp. She spun around, her heart pounding. A man stood in the cabin doorway. He was not a flight crew member. He was tall, dressed, not in a suit, but in a way that signaled a different, quieter kind of wealth. A simple black turtleneck, dark jeans, and expensive-looking but unassuming leather sneakers. He had sharp, intelligent eyes under a sweep of salt and pepper hair. He looked to be in his late 50s. I'm so sorry, Jasmine stammered, placing a hand over her racing heart. You startled me. The flight was scheduled to board at 07:30. I'm just finishing up. The man smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. My apologies. I'm early. I am Eris Beaumont. This is my aircraft. Jasmine's mind blanked. Eris Beaumont. The Eris Beaumont CEO of Aura Dynamics, the revolutionary battery and AI company that was single-handedly changing the aerospace industry. He was a legend, a recluse. Forbes estimated his worth at... She couldn't even process the number. This wasn't the hedge fund manager's plane. Maria must have had a last-minute schedule change. Mr. Beaumont, she said, finding her professional voice. My apologies. I'll be out of your way in just a moment. I just need to secure my supplies. No, please, take your time, he said. His voice was deep and calm. He stepped further into the cabin, his eyes scanning, not at the clean surfaces, but through them. He was an engineer, she realized. He was looking at the construction. You're very meticulous, he observed, gesturing to the cockpit. I've never seen the avionics panel gleam quite like that. Thank you, sir. We're trained to use an anti-static solution. Dust can be a major issue for the screens. He looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time. His gaze was intense. You know about avionics? Only a little, sir, she said, suddenly shy. I like planes. He nodded slowly. As do I. He paused, then, Celestial Clean, is it? You've been with them long. 8 months, sir. And you enjoy the work? Jasmine hesitated. Gregory's mocking voice echoed in her head. Do you even get to fly? She straightened her spine. I enjoy being around the aircraft, sir. The work is honest, and it facilitates my studies. Studies? He asked, his curiosity piqued. Before she could answer, Maria's voice called from the bottom of the stairs. "Jasmine, are you finished? We have the bombardier on the east ramp." "Coming, Maria," Jasmine called back. She turned to Mr. Beaumont. "It was a pleasure to meet you, sir. Have a safe flight." "Miss Duval," he said, stopping her, "you left this at the terminal coffee shop." He held out a book. Her book. Introduction to Jet Propulsion Systems. Jasmine's face flooded with color. "Oh my... I must have left it when Gregory humiliated me. Thank you so much, Mr. Beaumont. I would have been lost without that." "I can imagine," he said, handing it to her. His thumb had been resting on a chapter about turbine efficiency. "I found this to be a particularly fascinating read, especially the section on sustainable fuel compounds." Jasmine stared at him. He had read her textbook. "You're an engineer," she whispered. "I was," he said with a small smile. "Now I'm just a man who signs checks. A pleasure, Miss Duval." Jasmine hurried off the plane, her mind reeling. Heiress Beaumont. He had spoken to her. He had seen her textbook. He hadn't mocked her. He hadn't looked at her like she was the help. He had looked at her like an equal. The encounter was a tiny spark in the darkness of her morning. It was enough. A week passed. The encounter with Heiress Beaumont replayed in Jasmine's mind a pleasant distraction from the grinding work and the sting of Gregory's insults. She'd thrown herself even deeper into her studies, fueled by the brief validating conversation. She was working on a midterm thesis, a proposal for a new type of hybrid combustion chamber that could in theory increase fuel efficiency by nearly 15%. It was ambitious, perhaps impossible, but the math was sound. She was on a double shift cleaning a Bombardier Global 7500 that had just landed from Dubai. The passengers had deplaned quickly, leaving a wake of discarded newspapers and half-empty water bottles. The flight had been long and the cabin was in disarray. "This one's a full turnover," Maria said, tapping her pen. "They're flying to London in 3 hours. Let's move people." Jasmine was assigned the main cabin, which included a private stateroom with a full-size bed. As she was stripping the high thread count linen, something fell from between the pillows. It was a man's wallet. A simple, elegant black leather wallet. It made a heavy, significant thud as it hit the silk carpet. Jasmine's heart stopped. This was the ultimate test. Celestial Clean had a zero-tolerance policy. Finding lost items was common, but a wallet was a serious matter. She picked it up, her hands clinical. She didn't open it, but she could feel the thickness. It was stuffed with cash. She immediately clicked the small radio on her shoulder. "Maria, this is Jasmine in the 7500 stateroom. I have a code 5. Code 5 was their signal for a high-value personal item. "On my way," Maria's voice crackled back instantly. Maria was there in 30 seconds. As per protocol, Jasmine held the wallet while Maria put on a pair of white gloves. She opened it to find the owner's identification. Maria's breath hissed out. "Oh, madre mia." She turned the ID around for Jasmine to see. The driver's license was for Heiress Beaumont. Tucked behind it was a stack of $100 bills too thick to count and a row of black and platinum credit cards. "This is his plane," Jasmine realized. "He must have been resting before they landed." "And he's already left the terminal." Maria said, her face pale. "His car service picked him up 10 minutes ago." Maria pulled out her phone. "I have to call his chief of staff. This is bad." "Wait," Jasmine said. "Look, this is his business card. Aura Dynamics. It has a private cell number on the back." "You are not calling Heiress Beaumont's personal phone," Maria said, horrified. "No, but you are. Calling his chief of staff means this goes through a dozen people. He's a reclusive man. He might appreciate the discretion. Just tell him his property was secured by your staff and is waiting in your office safe." Maria looked at Jasmine, then at the card. She nodded, impressed. "Good thinking." Maria made the call, her voice trembling slightly. But Jasmine was right. The man who answered, presumably Beaumont himself, sounded calm if slightly annoyed. Maria explained the situation, emphasizing that the wallet was secure in her locked office. "Thank you, Maria," Jasmine heard the deep voice say over the phone. "I'll send my driver back. Who found it?" "My team leader, Jasmine Duval, sir. She secured it immediately." There was a pause. "Miss Duval." "Of course. Please. Extend her my personal gratitude. I'll have someone there in 20 minutes. When the call ended, Maria let out a long breath. "You, Jasmine, are very good at this. You kept your cool." "It's just part of the job, Maria," Jasmine said, echoing her words from a week ago. An hour later, a severe-looking man in a dark suit arrived at the Celestial Clean office. He signed for the wallet, counted the contents silently, and nodded. "Mr. Beaumont extends his thanks," the man said. He then produced a thick envelope. "This is for the woman who found it, Miss Duval." Jasmine, who had been called into the office, shook her head. "I can't accept that." "It's not a request," the man said, his face impassive. "Please," Jasmine insisted, pushing the envelope back. "It's our company policy, and my personal one. I didn't do it for a reward. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Please just tell Mr. Beaumont that we're glad his property is safe." The security man looked at her, baffled. He had clearly never had a reward refused. He looked at Maria, who just shrugged. "She's a stubborn one," Maria said, not without pride. The man finally nodded, taking the envelope. "As you wish. Good day." When he left, Maria turned to Jasmine. "Are you crazy?" "That was probably $5,000, Jasmine." "It doesn't matter, Maria. It's just not why I do it." Jasmine didn't know it, but the security man reported the entire exchange to his boss. Eris Beaumont, sitting in his Manhattan high-rise, listened to the story, a look of profound intrigue on his face. "Jasmine Duval," he said to himself. "The aerospace student. Who is she?" He opened his laptop and typed a few words into his personal search engine. Jasmine Duval, MIT MicroMasters. Her student profile popped up. A professional-looking headshot, her resume, and most importantly, a link to her academic portfolio. He clicked it. The first document was her midterm thesis, a study on hybrid combustion chambers for increased turbine efficiency. Eris Beaumont, the man who hadn't taken a vacation in a decade, leaned back in his chair, canceled his next meeting, and began to read. The following week, the weather turned, bringing a cold, biting rain that swept across the tarmac. It was the kind of day that made the work 10 times harder. Jasmine's hands were raw, and her spirits were low. The brief high from the Beaumont encounters had faded, leaving only the reality of her life, the demanding job, the looming exams, and the ever-present shadow of Gregory. She hadn't seen him since the Starbucks incident, and for that she was grateful. But his poison had a long half-life. His words, "dead weight, still on your knees," had become a dark internal echo. Around 1100 a.m., Maria's voice crackled over the radio. "All teams, we have a pop-up charter on the south ramp. A developer is flying in a client. They want the red carpet treatment, which means we need to be visible when they land. Jasmine, Robert, you're with me." The red carpet treatment was a dog and pony show Jasmine loathed. It meant standing at attention near the aircraft, smiling and looking professional as the clients deplaned, just to reinforce the idea of premium service. Jasmine, Robert, and Maria stood in the driving drizzle, the whine of a landing Citation jet piercing the air. The plane taxied toward them and shut down its engines. The small air stair door opened. The first person out was a man in an expensive-looking overcoat, Mr. Henderson, a developer Maria had briefed them on. The second person was Gregory. Jasmine's blood ran cold. It turned to ice in her veins. He was wearing the same tight suit, his hair plastered to his head with an obscene amount of gel. He was smiling, schmoozing, pointing animatedly at the terminal. "And this, Mr. Henderson, is where the real money lands," Gregory said, his voice carrying on the wind. "The people who buy my properties don't fly commercial. This is the lifestyle, my friend. Pure, unadulterated access, Mr. Henderson nodded, looking impatient to get out of the rain. Then Gregory saw her. He stopped. His schmoozing smile faltered, then reformed into something ugly and cruel. He couldn't believe his luck. Here she was again, a prop for his performance. He steered his client directly toward the Celestial Clean team. Maria, sensing trouble, stepped forward slightly, her customer service smile plastered on. "Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome to Teterboro. Celestial Clean is here for any in-flight needs." "I'll bet you are," Gregory said, his eyes locked on Jasmine. He ignored Maria completely. "Gregory," Jasmine said, her voice a low warning. "This is a secure area. You need to proceed to your vehicle." "Oh, I will. But you have got to see this," Gregory said to Mr. Henderson, grabbing his arm. "This is what I was telling you about. It's hilarious. Hey, Jasmine." He was loud. Several ground crew workers fueling a nearby plane turned to look. "Jasmine, this is Mr. Henderson. He's a very important developer." "Mr. Henderson, this is my ex-wife." Mr. Henderson looked from Gregory to Jasmine, his expression clouding with discomfort. "Gregory, this isn't the time." No, it's perfect." Gregory insisted, a manic energy in his eyes. He was playing to an imaginary crowd. She's the one who makes sure the toilets flush for the rich and famous. Right, honey, wiping up after people like me and Mr. Henderson." Maria stepped in, her voice firm. "Sir, that is entirely inappropriate." "Inappropriate? It's the truth." Gregory laughed, droplets of rain catching on his eyelashes. "She had all these big dreams. Engineering, wasn't it? Something with planes. Looks like you're real close to them now, Jazz. Still scrubbing floors while I'm selling penthouses. Some people just find their level, you know. And you, my dear, seem to have found yours." Jasmine was frozen. It was one thing to be insulted in the relative anonymity of a Starbucks. It was another to be degraded on the tarmac in her place of work in front of her boss and colleagues by the man who had promised to love her. The rain mixed with the hot, stinging tears that welled in her eyes, and she hated herself for them. She felt small. She felt exactly like the dead weight he'd called her. "Gregory," she finally whispered, her voice shaking with a mixture of rage and humiliation. "Please, just go." "Aw, am I embarrassing you?" he crooned, stepping closer. "Don't be embarrassed. It's an honest living. A lowly living, but honest." "That's enough," Robert suddenly boomed. The older man stepped in front of Jasmine, his face red with anger. "You will not talk to her that way, you pathetic little man." "Get out of my way, old man," Gregory snarled, shoving Robert's shoulder. "Sir!" Maria shouted, reaching for her radio to call security. It was all happening too fast. Jasmine was trapped in a nightmare of her own, making the roar of the jet engines replaced by the sound of her own blood rushing in her ears. "He's right, Mr. King. That is quite enough." The voice was not Robert's. It was not Maria's. It was deep calm and carried the effortless authority of a thunderclap. Everyone froze. Gregory, his hand still raised from shoving Robert, turned. Walking from the main terminal building, flanked by two men in dark, severe suits and holding a simple black tablet, was Eris Beaumont. He was not dressed for the rain. His black turtleneck was already damp, but he seemed entirely unbothered by it. His eyes were not calm. They were chips of steel. Gregory, flustered and not recognizing the man, immediately went on the defensive. "Hey, pal, who are you?" "This is a private conversation. I'm here with a client." "Your client, Mr. Henderson," Eris said, his gaze flicking to the developer. "And I have a mutual acquaintance, Don Lake at the Austin Property Group." Mr. Henderson's face went white. He knew exactly who Don Lake was, and he knew that anyone who knew Don Lake on a first-name basis was not a pal. "And you," Eris continued, his attention landing on Gregory with the weight of an anvil, "are trespassing on a secured flight line and harassing a contracted employee. So I will ask you again, who are you?" The shift in power was immediate and absolute. Gregory's bluster evaporated, replaced by a panicked stammer. I'm Gregory King, King's Realty. I'm meeting Mr. Henderson. Your meeting is canceled, Eris said flatly. You can't do that, Gregory sputtered. I can, Eris said. This terminal I'm on the board. This tarmac my jets are serviced here. And Celestial Clean, they are my personal contractors. He took a step closer, his security team fanning out slightly. And you, Mr. King, have just assaulted one of their employees. Gregory looked at Robert, then back at Eris. I pushed him. He got in my face. After you verbally abused Miss Duval, Eris stated. It wasn't a question. Gregory was sweating the rain in his own panic, making him look pathetic. Look, she's my ex-wife. It's complicated. I was just joking. Joking? Eris repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. You find her profession a joke? Well, yeah, kind of. Look at her. Gregory said, his desperation making him reckless. She's a cleaner. I'm a successful realtor. I was just pointing out the difference. Jasmine, who had been watching this exchange as if from a great distance, finally found her voice. Mr. Beaumont, you don't have to. Eris held up a hand, silencing her gently without even looking at her. His eyes remained locked on Gregory. The difference, Eris said, is that Miss Duval's profession requires integrity, honesty, attention to detail, qualities you seem to be lacking. You don't know me, Gregory spat. I know enough, Eris replied. I know that you mock a woman who is working an honest job to put herself through one of the most difficult engineering programs in the country. And I know that you do it loudly, in public, because you are a small man, Mr. King, and small men must shout to feel tall. Gregory's mouth opened and closed. He had no response. He looked at Mr. Henderson for help, but the developer was actively avoiding his gaze, his face a mask of horror as he realized just who Gregory had picked a fight with. Eris Beaumont, the man who owned the future of aerospace, the man Mr. Henderson's entire industry would one day be begging for battery contracts. Now, Eris said, his voice crisp and final, terminal security is on their way to escort you out. I would advise you to leave before they arrive. I'm sure your client can find his own way. Mr. Henderson nodded frantically. Yes, absolutely. Mr. Beaumont. My apologies for this. I had no idea. You are known by the company you keep, Mr. Henderson, Eris said coolly. As Henderson scurried away, Gregory was left alone, standing in the rain, facing the billionaire who had just dismantled him with a few quiet words. He looked at Jasmine, his eyes filled with a new, terrified hatred. But Jasmine wasn't looking at him. She was looking at Eris Beaumont. Her mind spinning, unable to comprehend what was happening. How did he know the rain had softened to a mist, but the tension on the tarmac was thick enough to cut? The whine of the Citation's APU had died, leaving a strange wet silence broken only by the distant rumble of a taxiing Gulf Stream. Gregory stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning panic. The two terminal security officers were now walking briskly toward them, their expressions impassive. He was trapped. Seeing his escape route closing, Gregory tried one last pathetic gambit, his voice shifting from a snarl to a wheedling whine. Look, this is all a misunderstanding. A domestic dispute. It's private. You have no right to interfere. This was a public humiliation, Eris corrected him, his voice level and cold, slicing through Gregory's defense. You made it public when you assaulted an employee and created a disturbance on an active flight line. This is now a security matter. The security guards arrived, flanking Gregory. He looked wildly between them, his confidence completely shattered. Then Eris did something that shifted the entire gravity of the moment. He broke eye contact with Gregory, dismissing him as a concluded threat, and turned his full attention to Jasmine. His entire demeanor softened. The hard metallic anger in his eyes was replaced by a look of profound and professional respect. It was as if he was intentionally creating a bubble of calm just for her right in the middle of the storm. "Miss Duval, Jasmine," he said, his voice now quiet for her alone. "I apologize for that interruption. It was not my intention to make a scene." Jasmine, who had been watching this exchange as if from a great distance, finally found her voice. She was trembling, her mind a frantic blur. This man, this legend, had just defended her. "But why? How? Mr. Beaumont," she said, her voice shaking. How did you know? About my program, about me?" "I told you," he said with the smallest hint of a smile. "I'm an engineer. I'm always interested in other engineers." He turned back and his voice rose again, crisp and clear, a public address. He was not just speaking to Gregory. He was speaking to Maria, to Robert, to the security guards, to the very tarmac itself. He was rewriting the narrative Gregory had tried to create. "You see, Mr. King," he announced, and Gregory flinched at the sound of his name. "What you so arrogantly mistook for a cleaner is one of the brightest young minds I've come across this year. This floor scrubber, as you so charmingly put it, is the same woman who found my wallet last week, on my aircraft." Gregory's head snapped up. Maria and Robert's eyes went wide. "A wallet?" Eris continued, his voice hammering home each point, "containing over $10,000 in cash. My personal keys and several secure access cards to my company's R&D laboratories. Enough to compromise my entire quarter's research." Jasmine blushed, remembering the moment, the simple right or wrong decision. She returned it intact, and when my head of security offered her a $5,000 reward, she refused it. Gregory stared, his small calculating mind unable to process the concept. "Refused? That," Aris said, his voice dropping dangerously as he locked eyes with Gregory, "is called integrity. A concept you might want to look up in one of those real estate pamphlets you hand out. You see, you measure a person by the car they drive or the suit they wear. I measure them by their character, and yours, sir, has been found." He paused, searching for the word bankrupt. Jasmine felt Robert's hand on her shoulder, a silent, trembling show of support. "I was intrigued." Eris continued, his gaze sweeping the small crowd. "Deeply. So I looked her up. I found her academic portfolio. I found her midterm thesis, a study on hybrid combustion chambers for increased turbine efficiency. I read all 40 pages. Last night." This was a shock. Even Jasmine was stunned. He'd read her thesis, the one she'd bled over. "It's brilliant, flawed in its assumptions on page 28, but brilliant. The foundational math is revolutionary. It's a problem my own R&D team has been working on for a year, and this cleaner is solving it between shifts." The humiliation Jasmine had felt was gone, burned away by a white-hot electric pride. He wasn't just defending her, he was validating her. "So," Eris said, taking a final step away from Gregory and closer to Jasmine, "while you are busy selling condos, Miss Duval is designing the very machines that will fly over them. You were right about one thing, Mr. King." He looked Gregory up and down with a final pitying glance. "People do find their level. Yours just seems to be here, on the pavement, harassing people who are vastly superior to you." It was a total clinical execution. The security guards, taking this as their cue, each took one of Gregory's arms. "Sir, you need to come with us." "Get your hands off me!" Gregory shrieked, his composure finally completely breaking. He was no longer a slick realtor. He was a cornered animal. "You can't do this. I'll sue you. I'll sue all of you. I'll have your jobs. I'll sue her. Good luck with that," Ari said, not even raising his voice. He calmly checked his watch, a gesture of such profound dismissal it was more insulting than any shout. "My legal team is on retainer, and they are very, very bored. Now, if you'll excuse us, we're late." Gregory was dragged away, still shouting threats that the wind snatched and tore apart. "Late. Jasmine asked, her head spinning. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only a bone-deep confusion. She was still an employee. She was on the clock. Late for what? I have to finish my shift. Maria, I am so sorry for all this. I'll get right back to... Maria already knows, Eris said, turning to her. He nodded to Maria, who was looking at him with something approaching reverence. I spoke with her this morning. She has graciously agreed to release you from your contract. Jasmine's heart stopped. Release me? For a terrible sinking second she thought she was being fired, that the scene Gregory caused had made her a liability. Release me? I don't understand. What? Jasmine? Ares said, his voice kind but firm, the voice of a CEO closing a deal. Aura Dynamics has a standing rule. We find talent and we acquire it. I'm not letting a mind like yours polish chrome, not even for my own company. You've been poached. Effective immediately. Her mind simply couldn't catch up. Poached? My R&D director, Dr. Lena Harding, is waiting for us in Manhattan. We have a 2:00 p.m. meeting to discuss your thesis. And your new position. My new position. Lead Junior Engineer, R&D Skunkworks Division. If you want it. He said Skunkworks, the holy grail for any aerospace engineer, the place where the impossible was built. The salary, he named a number that was so high Jasmine's knees buckled and she genuinely thought she might faint, is of course negotiable. We'll also be funding the completion of your master's degree, and your doctorate should you choose to pursue it. Jasmine Duval stood on the rain-slicked tarmac at Teterboro Airport, her celestial clean polo sticking to her back. The man who had destroyed her life was a fading, angry noise, and the man who was changing the world was offering her everything she had ever dreamed of. Tears no longer of humiliation, no longer of anger, but of a profound, shattering, and terrifying relief streamed down her face. She looked from Eris's expectant face to Maria's tearful, beaming one. She was speechless. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Eris said, his small smile returning. Say yes, and we can get out of this rain. As if summoned by Eris Beaumont's words, a car glided onto the tarmac. It didn't drive, it floated. It moved with a preternatural silence, parting the mist like a ship's bow. It was a breathtaking machine, a deep midnight blue Bentley Mulsanne, its massive handcrafted chrome grille gleaming with a quiet superiority, even in the dull, overcast light. The car was a statement of physics-defying luxury, an artifact from a different reality dropped onto the functional, oil-stained concrete of the working tarmac. Its engine was a low, powerful hum that was felt in the soles of the feet more than heard with the ears. It stopped silently beside them, the sheer bulk of it displacing the very air. A chauffeur in a crisp black suit and cap stepped out, seeming utterly unaffected by the drizzle. He moved with an economy of motion that spoke of years of perfect service, walking to the rear passenger door and opening it with a seamless, practiced sweep of his arm. Eris gestured to the open door, an invitation into another world. The interior was a blaze of warm, cream-colored leather, so pale and perfect it looked like it had never been touched by human hands. Polished dark wood the color of rich espresso looped around the cabin. It wasn't a car interior, it was a private study. Please, Jasmine. After you. Jasmine was speechless. The sound of Gregory's fading, pathetic protest was still ringing in her ears, a sharp contrast to the silent, dignified offer in front of her. She looked down at herself. At her uniform, the navy blue work pants damp and creased from kneeling. Her water-stained polo bearing the small embroidered comet of celestial clean. Her sensible non-slip shoes worn and practical. Then she looked back at the plush, immaculate interior of the car. The cream-colored carpet alone probably cost more than her rent. This was a vehicle that cost more than the house she and Gregory had once shared, the one he had fought so hard to keep, the one he was now probably struggling to afford. The chasm between her world and this one felt a mile wide. To step inside felt like a transgression. I can't, she whispered, her voice cracking. She took an involuntary step back. Mr. Beaumont, I'm a mess. I'm all wet from the rain. I'll ruin the seats. For the first time, Heiress Beaumont actually laughed. It was not a polite chuckle. It was a short, genuine, appreciative laugh that surprised her. It instantly cut through the tension. Miss Duval, he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. This car has survived a sudden sandstorm in Dubai and a protesting mob with paint cans in Paris. I assure you it can handle a little New Jersey rainwater. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping, but it was not conspiratorial. It was sincere. Besides, he added, his gaze meeting hers, you are the cleanest person here, in every way that matters. His words hit her with the force of a physical blow. In every way that matters. It was the perfect unspoken rebuke to Gregory's shallow obsession with image. It was the validation she hadn't even known she was starving for. She tore her eyes from his and looked over at her colleagues, her found family on the tarmac. Maria, her tough-as-nails boss, had tears streaming openly down her face, making no move to wipe them away. She gave Jasmine a sharp, proud, jerky nod. Go, she mouthed, her expression fierce. Go! Beside her, Robert just beamed. His face, usually etched with a gentle, weary kindness, was split by a grin of pure, unadulterated triumph. He didn't say a word. He simply raised his hand stiffly and gave her a slow, respectful military salute. A salute of a veteran acknowledging a fellow warrior who had just won her battle. Jasmine took a deep, shuddering breath. This was it. This was the moment. She turned back to her team. She unzipped her celestial clean jacket, the one Gregory had mocked, the one she had worn in the pre-dawn cold for 8 long months, the one that represented her struggle, her humiliation, and her quiet, stubborn perseverance. She didn't just take it off, she shed it. She was shedding her old life. She folded it neatly into a perfect, respectful square. This uniform had saved her after all. It had been her armor. She walked over to Robert and handed it to him. Thank you, Rob, she said, her voice thick. For everything. For standing up for me. Gave 'em hell, Jazz, he whispered, his voice rough as he took the jacket. Gave 'em hell. We'll be watching for you. On the news. She smiled a real smile and turned. She walked past Maria, who squeezed her arm, a silent, I'm proud of you. She walked past the spot where Gregory had stood, the spot where he had tried to break her. There was nothing there but a patch of damp concrete. She walked past the invisible line separating her old life from the new, her sensible shoes making quiet sounds on the tarmac. The chauffeur stood like a statue, holding the door, his face a mask of perfect neutrality. She didn't look back. Jasmine slid into the Bentley. The leather was softer than anything she had ever touched, and it was warm. The seat seemed to contour to her body instantly. The door closed behind her with a soft, heavy, definitive thud, and the world vanished. The sound of the tarmac, the whine of a distant jet, the hiss of the rain, the rumble of a fuel truck was gone, sealed out. The silence was absolute, a luxurious cocoon that insulated her from everything. The air smelled faintly of rich leather and polished wood, not stale coffee and jet fuel. Eris got in the other side. The chauffeur closed his door with the same finality. He moved to the driver's seat, and the car began to pull away, gliding silently without a single vibration toward the exit gate. As they made the turn, Jasmine caught a final glimpse of her ex-husband. He was standing between the 2 security guards, his expensive suit jacket askew, his hands cuffed behind his back. He was shouting something, his face a contorted mask of rage, but she couldn't hear a word. He was just a man, small and insignificant, a silent movie of his own pathetic making. He grew smaller and smaller in the polished, rain-beaded window until he was just a blurry figure lost in the mist. He was no longer her problem. He was no longer anything. Inside the car, Eris didn't speak for a full minute. He simply let her breathe, let her acclimate to the sudden jarring peace. He was giving her a moment to process the shift, to let her heartbeat return to normal. Then he leaned forward and tapped a small refrigerated compartment between their seats. A silent drawer slid open, revealing frosted bottles of water. "Here," he said, his voice calm and normal, as if they were colleagues meeting for coffee. He handed one to her. "I apologize for the theatrics back there. I have a distinct intolerance for bullies. I find they are inefficient, a waste of energy." Jasmine took the water, her hand still shaking the cold bottle, a grounding real object in this dreamlike moment. You read my paper," she said. It was the only thing her brain could fully grasp. My college paper." "I did," he said. He tapped the black tablet in his lap. The screen lit up and she gasped. It was her thesis, her 40-page proposal displayed on the high-resolution screen. And it was covered in digital red ink notes, comments and complex equations in the margins. It wasn't just read. It was analyzed. "As I said, it's brilliant." Eris continued tapping a section. "Your foundational assumptions about plasma-assisted combustion are bold, revolutionary even. You're wrong on page 28 about the ion saturation point. You overlooked the thermal variance, but your core concept for the chamber geometry is something my R&D team has been trying to crack for 6 months." Jasmine stared at the notes. The shock, the tears, the adrenaline from the confrontation, it all evaporated, burned away by a sudden intense flare of intellectual fire. The engineer inside her, the woman Gregory had tried to extinguish, woke up and took charge. I wasn't wrong," she said, her voice suddenly clear and strong, all trace of a tremor gone. She leaned forward, pointing at the screen. "I wasn't wrong. I didn't account for a non-adiabatic compressor. My math assumes a perfect system. But if you adjust the algorithm to account for the heat loss, if you recalibrate the fuel-air mixture, the saturation point stabilizes." Eris Beaumont went very still. He looked at her, and a slow, predatory smile spread across his face. It was not a smile of charm or kindness. It was the smile of an engineer who has just found a worthy adversary. The smile of a master who has just discovered a prodigy. "Then show me," he said. He handed her the tablet. Jasmine Duval, ex-wife, ex-cleaner, and future engineer, took the tablet. It felt heavy and solid in her hands. It felt like a weapon. It felt like a tool. It felt like her future. "Dr. Lena Harding, my R&D director, is going to be very interested in this," Eris said, leaning back against the leather. "Now, let's talk about combustion chambers." And as the Bentley Mulsanne, a silent blue shadow, merged into the traffic leaving Teterboro, Jasmine Duval leaned forward, her eyes bright, and began to design her future. That day, Jasmine Duval didn't just leave an airport. She left her old life in the rearview mirror. What Gregory meant as a final cruel humiliation became her ultimate liberation. It wasn't the Bentley or the Billionaire that saved her. It was her own integrity, her relentless grit, and the quiet dignity of her work. She was never dead weight. She was a rocket just waiting for the right fuel. Her story is a powerful reminder that your current job is never your final destination, and the people who judge you from the sidelines have no idea how high you're about to fly. Thank you for listening to this incredible story of karma and triumph. If you were inspired by Jasmine's journey, please show your support. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear that their hard work matters, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that will restore your faith in justice. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. What did you think of Gregory's downfall? Let us know in the comments below. He pushed the last cardboard box labeled kitchen junk toward the door with his expensive shoe. "Let's be realistic, Jen," he sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "You're 38. You have no career. You have nothing." He leaned against the marble countertop of the kitchen he was keeping. "I'm giving you a generous settlement, but we both know it won't last. You'll never find someone better than me. You'll be lucky if you find anyone at all." She stood by the door, clutching her purse. her reflection warped in the steel of the high-end Sub-Zero fridge. His words were meant to be a curse, a final stamp of his superiority. He was wrong. He couldn't have known that his final cruel words were not an ending, but a prophecy. And that his ex-wife's vindication wouldn't just be quiet. It would be broadcast live to millions. The air in the minimalist million-dollar condo was thick with the smell of fresh paint and betrayal. Gregory Gregg Shaw hadn't even waited for the ink to dry on the divorce papers before he'd had the entire place redone in shades of Arctic gray and slate. It was a cold, sterile environment perfectly matching the man who now surveyed his domain. Jennifer Jen Allen stood in the foyer, a stranger in the home she had spent 15 years building. Every piece of art she'd chosen was gone, replaced by abstract metal sculptures that looked like angry tangles of wire. "The movers took the last of your things," Greg said, not looking up from his phone. He was texting, a small, smug smile playing on his lips. Jen knew exactly who was on the other end. Tiffany, the 24-year-old paralegal from his real estate firm, Cushman & Wakefield, the one he'd been mentoring for the last year. "I know, Greg. I was just taking a final look," Jen murmured, her voice hoarse. He finally looked up, and his eyes were devoid of any warmth. They were the eyes of a businessman closing a deal. "A final look at what? This isn't your life anymore, Jennifer. It's time to accept that." 15 years, Greg. I supported you when you were just an intern. I put my own degree on hold to build this life with you. Her voice cracked, a sound she despised. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry. Greg sighed, an exaggerated, impatient sound. He ran a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. "Oh, here we go. The 'I sacrificed everything' speech. Let's be clear. You put your degree, an art history degree, mind you, on hold because you didn't have the drive to finish it. I built this. I made the money. You just spent it. And frankly, you weren't even that good at it." The cruelty was so casual, so practiced. This was the man who used to bring her coffee in bed, the man who'd held her hand during a terrifying miscarriage years ago. That man was gone, replaced by this polished, empty shell. "I'm just trying to understand where this came from," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "It came from boredom, Jen," he said, stepping closer. He still wore the cologne she'd bought him for his last birthday, a woody, expensive scent from Tom Ford. Now it made her nauseous. "I'm a shark, Jen. I need to keep moving forward. You were ballast. Comfortable but heavy. I'm moving up. I'm aiming for partner. Tiffany understands that. She's hungry. You just want to bake." His disdain for her passion was a familiar knife. He'd always called her baking puttering. "So that's it." She straightened her back, pulling the strap of her worn leather bag onto her shoulder. The bag was a relic from before the money, a time she'd mistakenly thought was happier. "That's it." He pushed the last cardboard box labeled kitchen junk toward the door with his $800 Salvatore Ferragamo loafer. It was filled with her favorite whisks, her mother's old recipe book, and her well-worn apron. "Let's be realistic, Jen," he sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "You're 38. You have no career. You have nothing." He leaned against the marble countertop of the kitchen he was keeping. "I'm giving you a generous settlement, but we both know it won't last. You're not smart with money. You're too emotional." "It's not generous, Greg. It's half of what I'm owed. Your lawyers buried mine in paperwork." "That's how the game is played, sweetheart," he scoffed. "And you're not a player. You're a hobbyist. And the world is run by professionals." He paused, looking her up and down. She was wearing simple jeans, a worn sweater, and no makeup. Her dark, curly hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She knew she looked tired. She felt ancient. "I'm just saying," he continued, "don't come crying to me in 6 months when you've blown through the cash and you're working as a barista, because I won't help you. I would never ask you for anything, Greg, ever again." "Good." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You'll never find someone better than me. You'll be lucky if you find anyone at all. I was the best thing that ever happened to you." The words hung in the air cold and sharp as glass. You'll never find someone better. It was his final verdict on her life. Jen stared at him, a flicker of something new. Not sadness, but a cold, hard anger igniting in her chest. She didn't say a word. She simply picked up the box of kitchen junk, turned and walked out of the condo. She didn't look back as the heavy oak door clicked shut behind her, sealing off 15 years of her life. Down on the street, parked in a no-parking zone, was a gleaming white Mercedes-Benz C-Class. Tiffany was in the driver's seat, sunglasses on, tapping impatiently on her phone. She glanced up as Jen emerged, a look of pure triumphant scorn on her face. Jen met her gaze, held it, and then walked past, her knuckles white as she gripped the cardboard box. Her new life was waiting. It was a tiny one-bedroom apartment on Pearl Street, smelling of old carpet and faint curry from the neighbors. It was a world away from the Arctic gray condo and the smell of Tom Ford. That night, Jen didn't unpack. She sat on the floor of her empty living room, the city lights of Denver just a distant glow. She opened the box labeled kitchen junk. She pulled out her mother's recipe book, the binding cracked and stained with vanilla extract. She cried. She cried for the man she'd loved, for the baby she'd lost, for the years she'd wasted. She cried until she was empty. And then around 2 a.m. she stood up. She walked into the tiny dated kitchen with its laminate counters and avocado green stove. She opened the recipe book to a page marked Grandma's Lemon Tart. She found the flour and sugar she'd bought on the way over. She found her whisk. And in the silence of her new small life, with Greg's curse echoing in her ears, "You'll never find someone better." Jen. Alan started to bake. The sharp, clean scent of lemons began to fill the room, the first good smell in a very long time. She was a hobbyist. She was a nothing. But as she folded the butter into the flour, her hands for the first time in years felt steady. The first 6 months were a blur of powdered sugar and panic. The generous settlement after paying the deposit on the apartment and buying a used rattling 2008 Honda Civic was terrifyingly small. Jen knew Greg was right about one thing: it wouldn't last. She applied for jobs. She went to interviews at art galleries and museums. The responses were always the same. 15 years is a long gap, Mrs. Allen. We're looking for someone with more recent digital curation experience. She was a relic. The panic attacks started waking her in the cold dread of 3 a.m. Greg's voice was a constant loop in her head. "You're nothing without me. Lucky if you find anyone at all." Her only solace was the tiny kitchen. She baked. She baked to stay sane. She baked because it was the only thing she knew how to do well. She gave her creations away to her neighbors, to the mailman, to the woman at the dry cleaner. It was her best friend Sarah, a no-nonsense ER nurse, who finally snapped her out of it. Sarah came over after a 12-hour shift, took one bite of a chocolate lavender scone, and slammed her hand on the counter. "Jen, this is not a scone," Sarah declared. Jen flinched. "What's wrong with it?" It's a religious experience. It's a work of art, and you're giving it away." "I don't know what else to do with it, Sarah." "You sell it. You stop applying for jobs you don't even want. You take that kitchen junk box of yours and you turn it into a business." "A business, Sarah? I wouldn't even know how. A bakery." "No, not a bakery. Not yet. A farmer's market stall. The one at Cherry Creek. It's expensive, but it's the best. You've got to be around people who will pay for quality." So with Sarah's help, Jen liquidating the last of her old life, a pair of diamond earrings, Greg had bought her a designer handbag and used the money to buy a tent, a foldable table, a business license, and ingredients. In bulk. She called her fledgling business the Mixing Bowl. The first day at the Cherry Creek Farmers Market was a disaster. She woke up at 4 a.m. It was a cold, rainy May morning. Her tent almost blew away. People hurried past, clutching coffee cups, heading for the established vendors. She'd made $300 worth of pastries. By 11 a.m. she had sold one muffin, to a very sympathetic-looking child. She was packing up early, tears of humiliation stinging her eyes when a man stopped at her stall. He was tall, dressed in a simple, almost worn Patagonia jacket and jeans. He had kind, tired eyes and a few days' worth of stubble. He looked, Jen thought, as exhausted as she felt. "You're closing up?" he asked. His voice was quiet, gentle. "Seems so," Jen said, trying to sound breezy. "Not a big day for lemon tarts." He looked at the small, perfect tarts. "That's a shame. They look like the best ones here." "They're the only ones here," she said with a watery laugh. He smiled. "My wife. She used to love lemon tarts. I haven't had a good one in a long time." The "used to" hung in the air. Jen understood loss. "Well, take one. On the house," she said. "No, I couldn't. Please. Otherwise I'm just going to eat them all myself in my car." He chuckled, a nice warm sound. He pulled out his wallet. "I'll take 4. And I'm paying for all of them." He paid with a crisp $100 bill and told her to keep the change. I don't have change for this," she stammered. "Then I guess I'll have to come back next week to get my change in pastries," he said. He picked up the bag. "Thank you. These smell like hope." He walked away before she could say anything else. His name was Rob. He came back the next week. And the week after. He became her first regular. He never talked about his work. He talked about books, about the weather, about her baking. He'd ask, "What's the story behind this one?" And she'd tell him about her grandmother's oatmeal cookies or the pear and cardamom bread she'd invented when she couldn't sleep. He was just Rob, a kind, quiet man who liked her baking. Her business grew, slowly, painfully. She wasn't getting rich, but she was paying her rent. The mixing bowl was getting a small, loyal following. Then one sun-drenched Saturday in July, the past walked up to her stall. Greg and Tiffany. Jen's stomach dropped to the floor. Greg was wearing a crisp polo shirt and expensive sunglasses. Tiffany, clinging to his arm, looked like a living Instagram filter, all perfect teeth and highlighted hair. "Well, well, well," Greg said, his voice loud enough for the other customers to hear. He looked at her tent, her handwritten sign, her simple pastries. The same sneer she remembered from the condo was plastered on his face. "A little bake sale. How quaint." "Hello, Greg," Jen said, her hands gripping the edge of her table. I'm almost impressed," he continued, gesturing to her lemon tarts. "You finally found a way to make money from your puttering. How much do you clear a day? $50, $100? Tiffany giggled, a high, tinkling sound. "It's cute, Greg, like a little girl's lemonade stand." "So this is what you're doing," Greg said, his voice dropping to a faux sympathetic tone. "This is the big new life, selling cookies in a tent. I told you, Jen. I told you this is where you'd end up." Jen's face was burning. She could feel the eyes of her other customers. She could see Mrs. Davis, her elderly jam vendor neighbor, looking on with concern. "I'm working, Greg," Jen said, her voice shaking but firm. "I'm supporting myself. Please, if you're not going to buy anything, I have other customers." Greg laughed. "Buy something, honey. I can buy a real bakery. I don't need this." He waved a dismissive hand. "It's just sad. I almost feel sorry for you." "Don't," Jen said, her anger finally eclipsing her shame. "Don't you dare feel sorry for me. You don't have the right." "Oh, feisty," Tiffany chimed in, stepping forward. "Look, Jen, I'm glad you're keeping busy. But Greg and I were on our way to brunch at the Broadmoor. We're closing on a house in Cherry Hills next week. He's doing so well." She patted Greg's arm. "He just made partner at the firm." It was a lie. Jen knew he was still just a vice president. But the lie was for her benefit. "Congratulations," Jen said, her voice flat. "Yeah, well." Greg tossed a $20 bill on the table. It landed on a tray of scones. "Here, for old time's sake. Buy yourself a new apron or something. He and Tiffany turned and walked away laughing. Jen stared at the $20 bill crumpled on her pastries. She felt the same old cold shame wash over her. You'll never find someone better. You're nothing. She didn't see Rob standing at the edge of the tent holding his usual bag, having witnessed the entire ugly exchange. His kind eyes were now cold, and they weren't looking at Jen. They were fixed on Greg's retreating back. He watched them get into a brand new metallic blue Porsche Cayenne and speed off. He stepped up to the table. Jen was trying to discreetly throw away the scone the money had touched. "Don't throw it away," Rob said quietly. Jen jumped startled. "Rob, I'm sorry you saw that." "He's your ex-husband," Rob stated. It wasn't a question. Jen nodded, her throat tight. "He seems unpleasant." "That's one word for it," Jen said, trying for a laugh and failing. Rob pushed the $20 bill back toward her. "Take this." "I don't want it." "Take it. Put it in your register. It's the price of admission for the show he just put on. Don't let him think he got to you." He then pulled out his own wallet. "And I'll take my usual 4 lemon tarts, and a dozen of those scones he insulted." Jen looked at him, gratitude welling up. "Rob, you don't have to do that." "I know," he said, handing her the cash. "But I want to. That man, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Your work is incredible, Jen, and so are you." He left, and Jen watched him go, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the July sun. She took Greg's $20 bill and, smoothing it out, put it in her cash box. It was the last dollar he would ever give her. Summer bled into fall. The mixing bowl was turning a real, albeit tiny, profit. Jen had moved from just the Saturday market to Sundays as well. She'd hired a part-time helper, a college student named Maria. The 4 a.m. mornings were still brutal, but the work felt honest. It felt like hers. Her friendship with Rob deepened. He was no longer just a customer, he was a friend. They'd grab coffee after the market closed, sitting on a park bench talking for hours. She learned about his wife Sarah, a different Sarah who had passed away 2 years prior, after a long battle with cancer. He spoke of her with a profound, gentle sadness, but also with a smile. He told her he'd been drifting, as he put it, before he'd stumbled on her stall. He in turn learned about Greg, not the details of the abuse, but the ghost of it. He understood the shadow, as he called it, that Greg had cast over her. "He defined you," Rob said one crisp October afternoon, "and now you're getting to define yourself. It's the hardest and best work a person can do." Jen felt a pull toward him, a safe, quiet attraction she hadn't allowed herself to feel. But he was just Rob, her kind, widowed friend. She was just Jen, the divorced baker. It was simple. One Tuesday, Jen was elbow-deep in flour testing a new pumpkin chai recipe when her phone buzzed. An email. The subject line read, "Media Inquiry, Good Day Denver." Her heart hammered. Good Day Denver was the city's #1 morning show. She opened it with trembling, flour-dusted fingers. "Dear Ms. Allen, my name is Brenda Walsh, and I am a producer for Good Day Denver on Channel 7. We are running a new segment called Community Spotlight, focusing on local entrepreneurs who have started fresh and are making a difference. Your name was recommended to us as an inspiring local success story. We would love to feature you and the Mixing Bowl live in our studio next Friday, October 20th, during the 8 a.m. hour. Please let me know if you are available. We think your story is exactly what our viewers need to see. Best, Brenda Walsh, producer. Good Day Denver." Jen read it 3 times. A mistake. It had to be a mistake. Who recommended her? She called Sarah, the nurse. "Was it you? Did you call Channel 7? "What?" "Jen, I'm stitching up a guy who tried to juggle a chainsaw." "I love you, but no." "Why?" Jen told her. Sarah screamed so loud the patient probably jumped. "You're going to be famous. You have to do it." Jen was terrified. Live TV. What if she said something stupid? What if she froze? What if Greg saw? The thought of Greg seeing her almost made her decline. He would mock her. He would find a way to tear it down. She told Rob about it at the market that Saturday. His reaction was immediate and absolute. "You must do it, Jen." "But Rob, I'm a baker. I'm not a story. And I'll be terrible. I'll get nervous and drop a scone on the floor." He put his hands on her shoulders, his gaze steady. "Jen, look at me. Your story is inspiring. You built this from nothing. You took your pain and you made something beautiful out of it. People need to see that. You need to see that." "Who even recommended me?" Rob smiled a little mysteriously. "Denver is a small town. Word gets around about the best lemon tarts." She agreed. The next few days were a blur of panic planning and baking. Brenda, the producer, was incredibly kind. "Just be yourself," she advised over the phone. "People will love you." Meanwhile, Greg Shaw was not having a good month. The real estate market had taken a dip. A huge deal he'd been counting on in the tech center had fallen through, and Tiffany was becoming expensive. Her demands for designer bags and weekends in Aspen were constant. He was feeling the pressure. He learned about Jen's TV spot from his mother, who had seen a short promo for it. "Isn't that nice?" his mother had said. "Jennifer is going to be on the news for her little bakery." Greg's blood ran cold. On TV. His failed cast-off wife. Being celebrated. It was an insult. It was a reflection on him. It suggested she was fine without him. He picked up his phone. He found the contact for a guy he'd played golf with, someone high up in ad sales at Channel 7. He sent a text. "Hey Mark, need a number for a producer on your morning show? Brenda Walsh. Have some background on a guest she's booked. It's important." He got the number. He called Brenda. "Brenda Walsh speaking." "Ms. Walsh, my name is Gregory Shaw. I'm Jennifer Allen's ex-husband." There was a pause. "Okay. Look, I'm calling out of concern," Greg said, his voice smooth and practiced. "Jen, she's not well. She's been through a very difficult, very public breakdown. This divorce, it's unhinged her. Putting her on live TV, I think it's irresponsible. She's fragile. She's unstable. I'm worried she'll have an episode right on your set. It would be a disaster for her and for your show." He laid it on thick emotional instability, prone to hysterics, not in her right mind. He painted a picture of a woman on the edge. There was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Brenda spoke, her voice clipped and professional. "Mr. Shaw, thank you for your concern. I have met with Ms. Allen. I have also coincidentally heard a few things about you. Let me be very clear. We are not canceling the segment. In fact, we're extending it. Have a nice day." She hung up. Greg stared at his phone, his face purple with rage. She'd heard things about him. How dare she? He threw his phone across his office, where it smashed against one of the metal wire sculptures. He was furious. He'd watch the show. He'd watch her crash and burn. He'd watch her humiliate herself, proving him right. He'd even call Tiffany into his office to watch it with him. "You've got to see this," he texted her. "My crazy ex-wife is about to have a meltdown on Good Day Denver. It's going to be hilarious." He had no idea what he had just set in motion. Brenda, the producer, immediately got on her headset and called the control room. "I want 2 extra cameras on this segment, and get me a feed to the green room. Our other guest needs to see this." The day of the broadcast, Jen woke up at 3 a.m., not to bake, but to be sick. Her nerves were shredded. She tried to practice what she was going to say, but her mind was blank. All she could hear was Greg's voice. "You're a hobbyist. You're fragile. You're nothing." What if he was right? What if she got on set and just broke? At 5 a.m., her phone buzzed. A text from Rob. "Jen, I'm outside. I have coffee." She ran down. He was there, leaning against a black Audi that looked much nicer than she'd ever noticed. He was wearing his usual jeans, but with a nice button-down shirt. He handed her a coffee. "Rob, what are you doing here? It's pouring rain." "I'm your ride," he said simply. "You didn't think I'd let you drive yourself, did you? You'd end up in Nebraska." She started to cry right there on the sidewalk. "I can't do this, Rob. I'm so scared." He didn't hug her. He just stood there solid as a rock. "Yes, you can. You're scared. That's normal. But you're also the woman who built a business from scratch while her entire life was falling apart. You're the strongest person I know. This is just talking. What do I even say? You tell the truth. You tell them about your grandmother's recipes. You tell them why you love the smell of lemons and cardamom. You tell them your story, not the part about him," he said, his voice hardening, "but the part about you." He looked at his watch. "I have to be somewhere this morning, a big meeting. But I'll be watching. I promise. I'll text you the second you're done. Now get in the car. You're going to be great." He drove her to the Channel 7 studio, the big meeting clearly on his mind. He seemed preoccupied checking his phone, but he was still a calming presence. He dropped her at the front entrance, gave her a quick supportive squeeze on the arm, and said, "Knock 'em dead, Jen. I'll be rooting for you." She watched him drive off, his words giving her a small flickering flame of confidence. The studio was chaotic. People with headsets were running everywhere. Brenda, the producer, met her, a warm smile on her face and a fire in her eyes. "Jen, you look fantastic. We're so excited." She was bustled into makeup, where a kind woman covered the dark circles under her eyes. She had brought her best pastries arranged on beautiful wooden boards Rob had helped her pick out. They set them up on the Good Day Denver kitchen set. It looked professional. Her work on TV. Brenda led her to the green room. "Mike, the host, will be in to prep you in a minute. We go live at 8:15. Just relax." Jen sat on a plush couch, her leg bouncing. The TV in the green room was playing the show, currently on a long commercial for a car dealership. A few minutes later, another man was escorted into the green room. He was older, in an impeccably tailored navy blue suit, carrying a sleek leather briefcase. He looked powerful. He nodded politely at Jen and sat on the other side of the room, immediately getting on his phone. A lawyer, Jen thought, or a politician. Meanwhile, across town, Greg Shaw poured himself a cup of coffee. He'd come into his Cushman & Wakefield office early. Tiffany sauntered in at 8:10, latte in hand. "Is it time? Is the train wreck about to start?" she asked, perching on his desk. "Any minute now," Greg said, turning on the small TV in his office. 8:15. Get ready to cringe." Back at the studio, Mike Daniels, the host, bounded in. He was all teeth and spray tan. "Jen, you're the baker. Great to meet you. Smells amazing in here." He started running through his questions. "So the mixing bowl. Tell me how that started." As they talked, the man in the suit glanced up from his phone. He was watching Jen, a small, curious smile on his face. "And we're back in 5, a voice yelled from the hall. Mike clapped his hands. "All right, Jen, let's go sell some scones." Brenda led Jen to the set. The lights were blindingly hot. A cameraman wheeled a huge camera right up to her face. Jen's heart felt like it was going to beat out of her chest. "And we're live." Mike smiled, a perfect gleaming smile. "Welcome back to Good Day Denver. If you're just joining us, we're here with our community spotlight. And I am so excited about this one. Folks, meet Jennifer Allen, the owner and founder of the unbelievably good local bakery, The Mixing Bowl." The camera's red light glowed. Jen swallowed, her throat dry as dust. "Jen," Mike said, "these pastries are gorgeous. Tell us, how did The Mixing Bowl begin?" Jen looked at the camera. She pictured Greg and Tiffany watching, waiting for her to fail. Then she pictured Rob. "Tell them your story." She took a deep breath. "Well, Mike," she began, her voice shaking only slightly. "The Mixing Bowl. It started about a year ago. I was going through a very difficult transition in my life." In his office, Greg leaned in. "Here it comes, the breakdown." "I'd lost a lot," Jen continued, finding her rhythm. "And I found myself in a new apartment with not much else but my grandmother's old recipe book. And I just started baking. I baked because it was the one thing that made sense. It was the one thing that felt like me. And I guess I guess I baked my way back to life. She was good. She was really good. She was natural, vulnerable, and strong. She wasn't just not failing, she was glowing. She talked about her passion for local ingredients, about the joy of seeing a customer's face when they bit into a scone. Greg's smile faded. She rehearsed this, he muttered. She's actually, really good, Tiffany said, sounding disappointed. Mike took a bite of a lemon tart. His eyes widened comically. Jen, I'm not kidding, this is the best lemon tart I have ever had. In my life. Jen blushed. Thank you. It's an old family recipe. Well, the family is brilliant, Mike said, and we're so inspired by your story. A true second act. In the green room, the man in the suit was watching the monitor, his phone forgotten. He was smiling broadly. Now, Jen, Mike said, turning to the camera, we heard you have one customer in particular who is a huge fan, a very loyal customer who comes to your stall every single week. Jen looked confused. I have a few regulars. They're all wonderful. Mike's grin widened. Yes, but this one, in fact, he's the one who suggested you for this spot. He called our producer Brenda personally. Jen was blank. He did who? He said you know him as Rob, Mike said. And he's here today. But Rob, well, he's a little more than just a fan. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Robert Lawson. Jen's blood turned to ice. What? The man from the green room, the powerful man in the suit, was now walking onto the set, shaking Mike's hand. Greg Shaw in his office froze. His coffee mug slipped from his hand and shattered on his desk, splashing hot coffee over quarterly reports. No, Greg whispered. No, that's not Robert Lawson. Tiffany, daughter of a finance broker, knew exactly who he was. Oh my God, she breathed. That's the Robert Lawson, CEO of Lawson Global Tech. He's one of the richest men in the state. He's a billionaire, Greg. A billionaire. On the screen, Robert Lawson. Rob was walking past the host and straight toward a completely shell-shocked Jen. He took her hands. He was smiling, his eyes, the same kind, tired eyes she'd always known were sparkling. You're doing amazing, Jen, he said, his voice quiet just for her, though the mic picked it up. Rob, she whispered, her mind unable to compute. The suit. Lawson Global Tech. You told me you had a meeting. I did, he said, turning to Mike but still holding Jen's hand. With your producer Brenda, and then with my legal team. He gestured to the man in the green room who was now standing at the side of the set, briefcase open. Robert? Mr. Lawson? What on earth is going on? Mike, the host, stammered, looking at his teleprompter, which was now just a blank, useless screen. The segment was off the rails, and it was just getting started. The studio was in a state of controlled chaos. Brenda, the producer, was in the control booth, headset clamped on, speaking in a low, urgent voice. Stay on the two-shot, get a camera on Mike's reaction, and whatever you do, do not go to commercial. On set, Mike Daniels was visibly sweating under his makeup. Robert Lawson, this is an incredible surprise. We are honored to have you. I had no idea you were a fan of Good Day Denver. Rob finally let go of Jen's hands, though he kept a proprietary arm around her waist, anchoring her. Jen herself hadn't moved. She was staring at the man she thought she knew, this quiet widower in a Patagonia jacket, who was now revealed as one of the most powerful tech innovators in the country, the man whose name was on the side of the Lawson Innovation Center downtown. I'm not just a fan of the show, Mike. Robert said, his voice calm and authoritative, the gentle Rob persona replaced by a CEO's command. I'm a fan of Jennifer. I've been a fan since the first day I tasted one of her pastries. So you're the Rob who recommended her? Mike asked, trying to regain control of his show. I am, Robert said. I called Brenda. I told her that if she was looking for a story about resilience, about talent, about someone turning grit and passion into a real-life success, she had to meet Jen. He turned and looked directly at Jen, his expression softening back into the man she knew. I'm sorry for the deception, Jen. The just Rob thing. When my wife passed the world, it became very loud. Everyone was Mr. Lawson. Everyone wanted something. I started going to that farmer's market because it was the one place I could just be a guy. Anonymous. And then I met you. Jen's mind was racing. The old Audi. The talk of a meeting. The Patagonia jacket. A classic Silicon Valley stealth wealth uniform she'd been too naive to recognize. You own Lawson Global Tech. She whispered the words, feeling absurd on her tongue. I do, he said. In Greg's office, Tiffany was frantically Googling on her phone. Greg, his net worth is estimated at $4.8 billion. He's divorced, no widower. His wife died. He's the most eligible bachelor in the country, and he's buying scones from her. Greg was silent. He was staring at the screen at the way this billionaire was looking at his ex-wife, the way he was touching her. It was a look of pure adoration, a look Greg himself had never not once given her. An icy dread, far colder than his earlier anger, was creeping up his spine. But Mr. Lawson, Mike the host pressed, surely you're not just here to endorse the lemon tarts. This is a big gesture. It is, Robert said, his smile fading. He turned not just to Mike but to camera one, the main camera, the one broadcasting to all of Denver. He was looking, Jen realized, right at Greg. I'm here, Robert said, his voice dropping. Because I have a story too. I told you I met Jen when I was drifting. I was lost. I'd spent 2 years in a fog of grief, and I met this woman who was building a new life from the ashes of her old one, a life that had been torn down by a man who didn't deserve her. Jen's breath hitched. Rob, no, it's okay, he said, squeezing her arm. It's time. You see, Mike, Jen's ex-husband. He's a piece of work, a real estate executive over at Cushman & Wakefield. A man named Gregory Shaw. Boom. The name landed. In the control room, Brenda's jaw dropped. In Greg's office, Greg himself stood up so fast his chair flew back and hit the wall. He named me. He named my firm. Tiffany looked horrified. Greg. This man, Robert continued, his voice resonating with cold, controlled fury, didn't just divorce Jen. He tried to destroy her. He told her she was nothing. He told her she was a hobbyist. He told her she was unstable. In fact, and here he looked right at Brenda, who nodded grimly, he even called this station yesterday. He tried to get this segment canceled. He told our producer that Jen was fragile and prone to hysterics. Mike Daniels looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He did, Robert confirmed. He tried to sabotage her. The same way he did just a few months ago when he came to her market stall to mock her, to tell her she was a failure, to throw money at her like she was a beggar. Jen was shaking. This was her private humiliation now being blasted to the entire city. And Robert's voice boomed. He told her one more thing. He looked her in the eye and he told her, "You'll never find someone better than me." Greg Shaw sank back into his chair. He was as pale as a ghost. His office phone began to ring, then his cell phone, then Tiffany's. He was wrong, Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. He turned away from the cameras, away from Mike, and faced Jen fully. The world shrank. It was just the two of them standing in a circle of hot light. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every micro-expression. He was wrong about everything, Robert said, his eyes, those kind, familiar eyes, now shining with tears. You're not nothing, Jen. You are everything. You're the strongest, kindest, most brilliant and resilient woman I have ever met. You're not unstable. You're the most grounded person I know. And your baking, it's not a hobby. It's art. It's the hope that I was missing." "Rob," she breathed, tears streaming down her face. "He told you you'd never find someone better." Robert took a shaky breath. "And I'm not him. I'm not arrogant. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be better. Trying to be the man that you deserve." And then, to the sound of a million jaws dropping across the city, the tech billionaire Robert Lawson dropped to one knee on the set of Good Day Denver. He reached into his suit jacket. He pulled out a small velvet box. Not from Tiffany & Co., not from a mall jeweler. It was a deep dark blue. From Graf. "Jen," he said, his voice cracking, You saved me. You baked your way back to life, and in the process you saved mine. You taught me how to live again, how to laugh again. I don't want to buy your lemon tarts just on Saturdays anymore. I want to wake up to them and to you every morning for the rest of my life." He opened the box. The ring. It wasn't just a ring. It was a star. A massive cushion-cut diamond at least 10 carats flanked by 2 smaller perfect sapphires. It was elegant, timeless, and worth more than Greg's condo, his Porsche, and his entire commission for the year combined. In his office, Tiffany let out a small strangled squeak. "Jennifer Allen," Robert Lawson said, his voice ringing with absolute sincerity. "You are my second act. You're my only act. Will you marry me?" The studio was so quiet you could hear the hum of the cameras. Jen stood frozen, the tears on her face illuminated by the studio lights. She looked at the ring, then at the man kneeling before her. This was not a dream. This was Rob. Her Rob, who just happened to be a billionaire kneeling on a cheap kitchen set asking her to marry him. All the old voices, Greg sneering, the "you're not good enough," the 15-year gap, they all just evaporated. They were burned away by the genuine, loving, hopeful look in Robert's eyes. She took a deep, shuddering breath, and she smiled. "Yes," she whispered. "What was that?" Robert whispered back, a grin spreading across his face. "Yes," she said louder. "Yes, Rob. 1,000 times yes." Robert let out a laugh of pure relief and joy. He slid the enormous diamond onto her finger. It was a perfect fit. He stood up, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her. It wasn't a chaste television-friendly peck. It was a real kiss, passionate and full of promise, right there on live TV. The studio crew, the producer, even Mike, the host, erupted in applause. Mike, recovering, stumbled back into frame. "Well, I think that's a yes. Congratulations to Jennifer Allen and Robert Lawson. We have to go to a commercial break. Wow. Just wow." The second the show cut to commercial, Brenda's voice came over the studio loudspeaker. "That's the best damn television I've made in 20 years. As the ads for Chevy Truck Month rolled, Greg Shaw's world was ending. His office phone, his cell phone, they were both ringing off the hook. He looked at the caller ID, the managing partner of his firm, the head of HR, his mother. He ignored them. He was staring at the dark screen, at the after image of that ring, that kiss. He planned it," Greg whispered. "The whole thing. He tanked my career on live TV." "He didn't just tank it, Greg," Tiffany said, her voice shaking. She was already backing toward the door, grabbing her purse. "He nuked it. From orbit. He named you. He named the firm." "Tiffany, where are you going?" "Where am I going?" She looked at him, her pretty face twisted in a mask of contempt and panic. "I'm going to my car. I'm going to my apartment. And I'm going to block your number. I am not going down with you." "Down with me? I'm a partner. Or, I'm making partner." "You're a joke, Greg," she shrieked. "You're the guy who let a billionaire's fiancée slip through your fingers because you were busy with me. You told me you were the catch. You told me she was nothing. You're a fool. The entire city just watched you get checkmated by a man who could buy this entire building with his pocket change." Us, he stammered. There is no us, she spat. You're radioactive. I'm not tying my future to you, the guy who mocked the lemon tarts of the future Mrs. Robert Lawson. She yanked open his office door and was gone. Greg was left in the silence, broken only by the incessant shrill ringing of his phones. He looked at the shattered mug on his desk, the coffee soaking into the papers. You'll never find someone better. He had been so sure. It had been his one true belief. He was the prize. On the TV, the commercials ended. Mike Daniels was back, looking dazed. Welcome back to Good Day Denver. We are still processing the most incredible thing that has ever happened on this show. Jennifer, congratulations. That ring. Jen, who was now sitting on a stool, her hands securely in Robert's, laughed. It's a bit much, isn't it? She joked. It's not enough, Robert said, kissing her hand. Now Jen and I have to go, but before we do, I have one last piece of business. He looked at the camera again. The man in the suit, his lawyer, stepped onto the set and handed him a folder. Mr. Shaw, Robert said, his voice flat and cold as steel. You'll be hearing from my legal team. Slander, defamation of character, and intentional infliction of emotional distress are just the beginning. But that's not this. He held up a single crisp piece of paper. This, he said, is a check for $1 million. The studio gasped. It's not for Mr. Shaw. It's for the mixing bowl. No, that's not right. The mixing bowl is perfect as it is. This is the first investment in the Second Act Fund, a new foundation I'm establishing in Jennifer's name. A foundation that will provide grants and startup capital to women just like Jen who are rebuilding their lives and starting businesses after divorce or loss. He handed the check to Jen. She looked at it, her name next to a staggering number of zeros, and she just sobbed a final cleansing wave of emotion. But, Robert added, we will be expanding the mixing bowl. Jen's lemon tarts are going national. Greg Shaw watched numb. It wasn't just a proposal, it was an execution. His ex-wife hadn't just found someone better. She'd found a king, and he had just publicly declared war on the jester who had hurt his queen. The show ended. Jen and Robert were ushered out a back entrance past a sudden frantic swarm of reporters who had gotten the tip. The story was already exploding. It was on TMZ, Page 6, Forbes, and the Denver Post. Tech billionaire Robert Lawson proposes to local baker on live TV. The lemon tart proposal. As they got into Robert's car, a sleek black Bentley, this time driven by a chauffeur, Jen finally turned to him, the $1 million check in her hand. A foundation's second act, she asked. I told you I had a meeting. He smiled. My lawyers were drafting the paperwork. I was going to do it anyway. The proposal, that was a bit more spontaneous. Seeing you on that set so strong and so beautiful, I couldn't wait another second. And the part about Greg naming him, Robert's smile vanished. That was planned. When Brenda told me what he'd done, that he'd tried to hurt you again, I decided it was time for the world to know exactly who he is, and more importantly, who you are. I love you, Rob, she said, leaning her head on his shoulder, the 10-carat diamond feeling impossibly heavy and impossibly right on her finger. I love you, Jen. Now, let's go get some breakfast. I know a place. The fallout was immediate. By 10 a.m., Greg Shaw was called into his managing partner's office at Cushman & Wakefield. The meeting was short. The corporate office are clients. They all saw the show, the partner said, his voice cold. Robert Lawson named us on live television. We have a morals clause, Greg. You are fired. Effective immediately. He was escorted out by security carrying his possessions in a box, a bitter echo of the one he'd pushed at Jen. His personal life collapsed just as fast. Tiffany, seeing her future tied to a radioactive man, had already blocked his number. When Greg arrived at his condo, his key didn't work. He'd put her on the lease. She'd already changed the locks. He ended up at a budget hotel, forced to watch himself become a national villain. TMZ had found a bystander's video of him sneering at Jen's market stall, and they played it on a loop next to the clip of Robert's tearful, loving proposal. Team Jen was trending. While Greg's name became poison, Jen's became an inspiration. The Second Act Fund was a viral sensation. Robert's initial $1 million investment was matched by his billionaire friends, and the foundation had over $10 million before it even had a website. To escape the media storm, Robert took Jen to his private villa in Lake Como. There they planned. Jen was adamant she would not stop baking. The mixing bowl was her identity. So they decided to expand not as a soulless franchise, but as a beautiful flagship bakery in Denver. It would double as a training center for the Second Act Fund, staffing its kitchen entirely with women rebuilding their own lives. Their wedding 6 months later was the opposite of their proposal. It was private, held in the small community garden near Jen's first apartment. Sarah, the nurse, was her maid of honor. Greg's fate was the inverse. Unemployable in Denver, he sold his Porsche, lost the condo, and fled the state. The last anyone heard, he'd changed his name and was working as a used car salesman, a big shot no one believed. 1 year after the proposal, Good Day Denver broadcast a follow-up from the bustling, successful mixing bowl. Mike Daniels found Jen not in a suit but in her flour-dusted apron. "Jen," he said, "you've built an empire of hope." Jen laughed, her diamonds sparkling. "The ring is nice, but—" She pointed to a single mom, now her head baker, laughing as she decorated a cake. That's the real story. Robert joined them back in his Rob uniform and kissed his wife. "I'm the lucky one," he told the camera. "I got the girl and a lifetime supply of the best lemon tarts in the world." And just like that, Jen's story proves that the end of one chapter is never really the end. It's the beginning of a second act. She went from being told she was nothing to becoming the head of a foundation changing hundreds of lives. She lost a man who saw her as a hobby and gained a man who saw her as his entire world. Karma, as they say, always has a way of balancing the books. And sometimes it does it on live television. What did you think of Greg's downfall? Did he get what he deserved? And what about Robert's grand gesture? Was it the most romantic proposal ever? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If you love this story of justice and second chances, please give this video a like, share it with someone who needs to hear that their best days are still ahead, and make sure you subscribe to our channel and ring that bell. You won't want to miss the next story we have for you.